Home prices are sitting at record highs, and the housing market is heating up with the best time to sell your home right around the corner. But the question you're probably asking yourself is, should you sell now or wait for even more appreciation? Will waiting actually put more money in your pocket, or could it end up backfiring? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the key factors that you should consider when deciding to sell now or hold off until some point in the future. For anyone planning on selling their house, there's a question I always ask. Sell and do what? What is your plan once you actually end up closing on that property? Is it to buy another home? Or are you planning on renting somewhere? Are you moving out of state? And the reason I ask this question, because if you're selling without a plan, you could end up putting yourself in a tough spot. Now, depending on how you answer that question could impact whether selling now actually makes sense or whether you should actually wait until some point in the future. For anyone that's planning on selling a home and buying another home at the same time, what's going on in the market with regard to prices, with regard to demand, has much less of an impact than someone that's selling now and buying at some point in the future. And that's because if you're buying and selling at the same time, you're essentially in the same market. So if you're someone trying to reach the absolute top price for your home, trying to sell it for the most amount of money, then you almost have to expect to some degree to be paying a high price when you go to buy something else. Rarely are you going to be able to sell something for top dollar and turn around and buy something at the bottom of the market. But when you're planning on selling something and renting and waiting for the market to adjust, or you're potentially selling and moving out of state and buying something else, then the question is a little bit different. And that's where you really have to consider what the market is doing. What is actually happening in the market where you're planning on buying in the future? Is inventory picking up? What's buyer demand doing? Can you actually find a home that you want to purchase? Over the last couple of years, inventory has been very, very low. And many buyers out there have struggled to find the right home. I have a lot of buyers that are sitting on the sidelines waiting for the right home to pop on the market. And so if you're one of those people that plan on selling and you're just waiting for the right opportunity, then I completely get it. But if you're somebody out there that's planning on selling and then you're waiting for the market to adjust, you're waiting for home prices to come down to get back in the market, then my advice is don't do it. And the reason I say that is because I have several clients that have sold in my career with the idea that they were going to time the market, that they were going to sell at the peak and come back as prices dipped, as rates improved, as monthly payments and affordability started to come more in line with what they thought they should be. And guess what? Most of those people still don't own a home today. So just remember, all real estate is local. We're located here in Southern California. Our market is still in high demand. Yeah, the market has adjusted from where it was a couple of years ago, from a super strong seller's market to now more of a balanced market, but it's definitely still in most sellers' favor, especially when you're under that $2 million price point. There's still a lot of buyer demand out there. And while inventory is picking up, just understand inventory as a whole is still well below the traditional levels that we would have seen prior to the craziness of the pandemic. So if you're someone that's considering selling your home now, but you're planning on buying at the same time, then there's a high likelihood to whatever you're experiencing on your house when selling it, if you're getting a lot of competition, if you're getting a lot of offers, if you're getting a lot of activity just in general, then that's essentially what you're going to be up against. That's going to be your competition when you go to buy something else. Unless for some reason that you're jumping way up in price point or you're doing something entirely different. But for most people, that's not the case. But what I want to do here is take a step back and talk about the reasons to sell right now. And then we're going to talk about the reasons why you shouldn't sell. And then ultimately, we'll talk about that plan thing that I mentioned earlier. Selling without a plan could ultimately backfire. Now, before we dive into today's content, I want to take a minute and ask a favor. If you find any value in my videos at all, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. And if you want to stay updated on everything selling Orange County, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. So if you're watching this video, you're considering that question of selling now versus later. So let's take a minute here and actually talk about reasons that you should sell now. Why should you put your home on the market in this environment versus waiting to some point in the future? And the first thing I want to start with is prices, right? Home prices are still sitting near record highs. And at the moment, inventory is still well below those traditional levels. So there's still buyer demand out there. While it is somewhat limited, it's about to pick up as we head into the spring market. And with that, you know where prices are right now. You don't know where prices are going to be in the future. So if you're looking at your home and you're looking at the net calculation saying, hey, if I sold my house for this, this is how much money I would walk away with, and that excites you, then that might be a reason to take advantage of the market right now versus waiting at some point in the future. Now, I'm not a crasher. I don't believe home prices are going to go down substantially, but I also don't believe that we're going to see the appreciation that we've seen over the last couple of years. I think it's going to be more moderate than anything else. So if we do see appreciation, it's probably going to be in the 2 to 3% range versus the 5 to 10% that we've seen over the last couple of years. So by selling now, you're not really leaving a lot of money on the table. But with that said, you have to be able to find a home that you plan on buying, right? If you're looking at the market right now and you don't see a property that you'd be willing to buy, or if you're somebody that's planning on renting, you can't find the right rental, or you don't want to rent at X prices or whatever, then you might end up waiting. And we're going to talk about that. But the other wild card out there at the moment is mortgage rates. At the moment, mortgage rates are sitting around 7%. And we've seen a lot of volatility. While President Trump wants lower rates, and we've heard Elon say that rates are likely to come down, helping buyers, the reality is we don't actually know that's going to happen. And even then, if lower rates come, that likely means more buyer demand, but it also likely means more sellers, so more competition on the market. So if you were to put your home on the market now, you might be the only home in your neighborhood. Whereas by waiting until the future, if rates go down, there could be multiple homes in your neighborhood. You could have more competition. You could have someone list their home that's comparable to yours for less money than you wanted to sell your home for, and that could end up affecting your value. And believe me, this isn't a push to get you to go out and sell a home, but the idea of selling now is that you know the environment. You have an idea of what to expect versus predicting the future. We know the market is super volatile. In fact, a lot of people have gotten market predictions wrong over the last couple of years just because of all the volatility out there. So if you're somebody that wants a little bit more certainty in the selling process, then I would probably focus on doing it now versus waiting. But on the flip side, there are also reasons that you should consider waiting to sell your home. And the first one is what I mentioned earlier, and that's that you don't see what you want out there on the market. I wouldn't be selling my house if I couldn't find a replacement property. I'm not somebody that wants to sell a house and go rent. I'm a homeowner. I want to own whatever it is I'm living in. And the other reason you might wait is if you plan on selling and maybe moving to another area and you think that prices are going to appreciate in your market or that they're going to be lower in another market, then that could be a reason to wait. But if you're planning on selling and buying in the same market, then it makes probably very little difference because, again, if you're selling high, you're buying high. If you're selling low, you're probably buying low to some degree. But if you're selling in a market like California and you plan on buying in a market like Florida, well, Florida is starting to see a lot more inventory. That market is starting to see prices go down versus what we're seeing here in California. And the idea is that that might continue for a couple of months, maybe even the rest of the year. So if you think home prices are going to continue to appreciate in California, then you might wait and sell your home at a higher price and be able to buy in that market at a lower price. But like I said, all of this is a guessing game and ultimately a gamble. So it's very hard to predict what's going to happen in the future. So for me, the main reasons to wait really come around the idea that you're not able to find what it is you're looking for. If you're someone out there trying to time the market, then I think you're going to have a more difficult time than the traditional seller just because of how the market's reacting at the moment. You know, there's that saying that things can remain irrational longer than you can stay solvent. And when it comes to real estate, the market has been irrational for the last couple of years. And it's caused buyers to miss out on buying property. It's caused people to miss out on refinancing and just things in general because the market isn't doing what they had predicted it to do. Now, the other reason I might consider waiting in this environment is if I were planning on selling and going to rent something, I would want to look at what those rent payments are going to be. Whether I was living, whether I was renting in the area that I'm currently in or I was moving out of state and renting somewhere else, I would want to look at what that bottom line looks like. A lot of people at the moment have super low interest rates. Therefore, their mortgage payments are really, really low compared to what people are buying today. And I know a lot of sellers out there believe that, hey, I'm just going to go sell and I'm going to go rent something and it's going to be a lot less expensive. Understand, rents have gone up considerably. So you need to look at that prior to putting your home on the market, going under contract, and then finding out that it's not quite as affordable as maybe you thought it was to go out there and rent something. Understand also, when you're planning on buying something else, selling and buying something else, you need to be looking at what that looks like. Cost-wise, insurance costs are higher, property taxes have gone up in a lot of areas. You need to factor all of this in. So prior to putting your home on the market, you should be going through the pre-approval process for one, to make sure you're approved to buy another home, but also to see what that payment looks like compared to what you're currently paying. In many cases, it doesn't make sense to sell that home and buy something else. In fact, that's why a lot of the boomers out there aren't selling their home. That's why we haven't had this silver tsunami, if you will, of real estate coming to the market, is because a lot of sellers that have owned their homes for a very long time, their cost basis is really, really low compared to selling it and buying something else or renting something else. So at the end of the day, if you're selling and buying something else, and the only reason you're doing that is to save money, then make sure the savings are actually there before you sell. Because if they aren't, then I would probably not sell my house. I would wait or figure out another plan that made more sense. And that's going to take me into talking about the pitfalls, if you will, of selling a home without having a plan. A lot of people put their home on the market and then figure out the plan. Hey, I'm going to list my house. And then they go under contract, and then they go, okay, well, what am I going to do now? In fact, I have a client that we just sold her house, and now she's trying to find something after the fact. We got her a rent back for 29 days in the property, and she didn't have a plan. She didn't know where she was going to go, and now she's out searching different states to try to move that money into another property instead of renting. Now, in some cases, it makes more sense to rent. Now, if you're not someone that's familiar with an area, or you're in a rush to go buy something, then maybe renting for a period of time to get adjusted to the area, to figure out exactly what you want to do, could be a better decision versus just rushing in to buy something. And that's why it's always important to have that plan. Know where you're going to go prior to putting your home in the market. Are you going to rent? Are you moving out of state? Have you looked at rents? Have you looked at properties out of state? Does it make sense for you to do that? Again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with sellers putting their home on the market with this idea, this plan that they were going to buy at some point in the future when things pulled back. Well, things haven't pulled back. They're up 40, 50% since 2019 when I had some clients sell, and those buyers can no longer afford to own a home. So just make sure you understand the market that you're in or the market that you're headed to so your plan doesn't end up backfiring on you. I've had a lot of clients move out of state over the last couple of years. In fact, it's probably been about 25% of my sellers, my listings, have been moving out of state. And the reason they're moving out of state is because California is crazy in many ways with this idea that the grass is greener in Texas, the grass is greener in Florida, in Idaho, in Arizona, and in some cases it is. But at the same time, I've also had some of those sellers end up coming back to California because it wasn't everything they thought it was. They didn't have the plan that they thought they had because they hadn't really thought through it. They didn't realize that, yeah, there's no state taxes, but the property taxes are a lot higher. They didn't know about the bugs, the humidity. They didn't know what it really meant to live in the South. So in those cases, maybe you do sell, but you end up renting for a period of time, or you rent out your house here and then go rent something in one of those markets before you sell your home just to make sure it's the right move. So the question is, what's the best move for you? If you need to sell, don't wait for the perfect market. Don't try to time the market. You can control the sell now. You can't control what the future holds. And that leads me into what I was talking about earlier. If you're buying after selling, just make sure the numbers work. Make sure that what you're trying to do actually makes sense. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is that if you can afford to keep your home and rent it out because you don't need the money from that sale to buy something else, then my suggestion is to do it. I'm a real estate agent. I get paid to help people buy and sell property. But what I can tell you is if you can hold on to real estate, you should absolutely do it. In fact, I don't think you'll ever regret owning a piece of real estate, especially when you're looking back 10, 15, 20 years from now. Now, if you're watching this and you're unsure after this, do me a favor, reach out to me directly. We can have a conversation. I can help guide you through that process. In fact, you can get in touch with me by using that link below. Now, if you're somebody that is considering selling versus waiting, let me know what you're waiting on. Do me a favor and drop it in the comments below.